So if somebody could, people could volunteer to help and type in the names of the mushrooms that we are talking about in the chat box, that would help people follow along. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we can get started tonight. There we go. So as I mentioned, we are working on the family Strophariaceae tonight. So the Strophariaceae has, I didn't count them, 2, 4, 6, 8, about 10 genera in it, according to the outline of fungi, which was published in 2020. I think it's rapidly changing. I think some stuff are being moved out of this family. But generally, things in Strophariaceae, as best as I can tell, are all saprobic. They're all plant debris decomposers, whether they're growing on wood, on grass, animal dung, like herbivore dung, like horse or moose dung, deer dung, animals that are eating plant matter. Excuse me. And they have a dark spore print. And I believe all of these have some sort of annulus. I wouldn't 100% hold myself to that, but generally these all have an annulus. If you read some of the older Strophariaceae descriptions, it does say that they all have some sort of ring on the stipe. But like I said, the concept of Strophariaceae is changing really rapidly, though, with DNA. So from the observations that we already have collected from about half a dozen people, these first 6, we have examples of all of these. We did Pholiota last week, so I don't think we're looking at any Pholiota, but between myself, Marisol, Dave, and a couple of others, all of these genera, we have representatives to look at. So what I did for the last 4 genera, Browniella, Pseudogenopolis, Melanotus, and Protostropharia. I just looked them up really quick because I didn't know what any of these were. And I wanted to kind of gain a little bit of more of an understanding of these. So what I found out about these is Browniella, there's only one of them. That's what this number here denotes. There's only one of them. It was ascribed in 1934 by a Brazilian mycologist, but it wasn't clear if it was even a Brazilian mushroom or not. And its name was updated by Singer in 1955. There was a problem with the original name. So Rolf Singer in 1955 renamed the genus Browniella, but there's only one species, and I could find no modern photos of it. I could find what I think was the type specimen, an old black and white photograph of a dried mushroom that didn't really, wasn't very descriptive. So there's that one, Browniella. There's this one, Pseudogenopolis. Again, there's only one of them. And again, I could not find any modern observations of that, although I did find in this link, which I'm not going to even click on it, but I am going to copy it and put it into the chat if anybody wants to follow up on it. I did find an interesting conversation between Jacob Polk and Kurt Miller about this genus, Pseudogenopolis. And Jacob Polk, who's a really good taxonomist, he basically said Pseudogenopolis is a poor synonym for Genopolis. He says the mushroom that they were calling Pseudogenopolis is really a Genopolis, which kicks it right out of Strophariaceae. So according to Polk, this thing is not even existing anymore. This group, Melanotus, there at one point was approximately 33 of them. If you look up on species fungorum, they're all still listed there, but it looks like most of them, they generally, from the ones I was looking at, they all appear to be small oyster or Crepidotus-like organisms, but many of them have been moved to Taxonica, either Taxonica, which is in Strophariaceae, or they've been moved into other families, either Crepidotaceae or Pleurotaceae. And if you look at them, you'll see why people thought they, how they get these 3 confused. I have this one observation that I took. If I can get to click on there.
Luke.
Yes.
Oh, you can hear me. Thank you. I'm sorry.
I can hear you.
Okay.
So this was in that that genus I was just talking about, whatever that was called. Oops. Melanute. I forget what the genus was even called, but it's been moved to Taxononica now. But check it out, they're kind of neat. They grow with the stipe like laterally stipitate, like growing out of twigs. The couple different species I looked at were all like this. They look like Crepidotus. So at
Can
one
we
point,
see one photo?
yeah,
Or you want?
are you not seeing them? I'm scrolling through them.
No,
Oops, I'm
I
sorry.
see only the names.
Give me 1 second then. There you go.
Okay.
You can see that now, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So they look like kind of a Crepidotus or maybe Pleurotus type of things.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, nice.
And I looked at a couple. I looked at
Yeah.
a couple different species, and they all kind of have a similar look to this. So this is a Taxonica now.
Wow.
Believe it or not. This is an Alan Rockefeller observation from Mexico, but this species seemed to be present in Mexico all up and down the West Coast, California and Oregon. I couldn't find any observations of any of these Taxonicas on the East Coast that were, laterally stipitate.
This type looks very different. Yeah, like unusual.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like,
not like the Crepidotus.
no, but also not like Taxonica either. Like Taxonicas, my understanding of Taxonica, they're always like little tiny, centrally stiped things growing out of the ground, on like mulch and woody debris.
Yep, Taxonica used to include a lot of the Pseudogenopolis species that grow on wood.
Yep. Yes, I was just reading that, and they separated Taxonica from Pseudogenopolis based on the non-hallucinogenic properties of them. And now Pseudogenopolis.
Yeah, I think that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say now Pseudogenopolis has been moved into another whole family.
Mm-hmm. Are these this Taxonica we're looking at here? This is a dark spored mushroom, then I guess. Huh?
Yeah. Surprising, right? I mean, you wouldn't expect that.
Unusual. Oh, but in here you can see the darkened.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I guess the whole point there was that these melanotus, all of these melanotus seem to be these mushrooms that grow out of, it looks like they grow out of sticks, kind of with the stipe off to the side. And they've been all getting moved into Taxonica or into other families. And then the last one on here that we did not collect any observations for tonight is Protostropharia, which I think maybe I've heard that name, but I was not familiar with them at all. So I just did a search on Mushroom Observer, and there is actually a fair amount of them on Mushroom Observer.
I think this is a recent split off from Stropharia.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the name is starting to be used. That sounds right. The name's starting to be used on Mushroom Observer, and
is there one of them? Is one of them semi-globata?
Yeah, I think it is. I think I did see that name.
Yeah, that was a Stropharia up until recently.
Okay. Well, I grabbed this one just to look at one of them, Protostropharia alces, from a person named Sue Lancel, which I'm not familiar with her, but she's in Massachusetts, and she did a lot of work on this. There was no consensus on it, but she did enough work on here. I feel like it was worth looking at. So she's calling this Protostropharia. So they look like a Stropharia, or maybe like a Hyphaluma sort of. This is growing on moose dung.
Look.
Yes.
The species name is moose in Latin, but in Spanish too, alce. Alces.
Oh, that's how you say moose.
That's so cool. Alces. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the moose Protostropharia. And then she did a lot of microscopy on there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Look at the spores. Phew.
It's a good shot. There you go. There's a good shot of the spores. So again, no consensus on that name here, but she did a lot of work on this, so I felt like it was worth looking at.
Mhm. Nice.
So I guess we would not find this particular species here in New Jersey, unless it happens to want to grow on deer.
Moose.
Yeah,
Escape.
yeah, an escaped moose from the from the
Zoo.
zoo. So
Oh gosh.
okay,
Maybe
so,
North Country.
That's really funny.
So Luke, this is Penny. On
Hi,
the
Penny.
Stakonica, they're sort of like Psilocybe, but they're not hallucinogenic. Is that correct?
yes, they used to be lumped with Psilocybe, and then they split them off. They took all the Psilocybes that were not hallucinogenic and made them Stakonica. And now they've actually moved Psilocybe into another family of its own. But Stakonica has stayed here in Strophariaceae. So I guess my understanding is that they're all pretty closely related. They're all these dark spored mushrooms that grow on plant matter. But DNA has been, just kind of siphoning them off into different places. So anyway, that was my real quick summary of Strophariaceae, of the 4 genera that did not ring a bell, that we did not collect observations. Like I said, the ones that we're getting ready to share here cover all of these groups. So I guess let me check in. I do have observations from 5 or 6 people. Is there anybody else in the crowd tonight that has stuff that they want to share?
Yes, I have a question about Sterium, the different species of Sterium.
Asterium? Well, we're working on Strophariaceae tonight, so Asterium's pretty far off the subject matter for the evening.
Okay, just briefly, okay? Some people claim that actually Sterium Austria is not North American.
That's true.
Yes, that is true.
We have been calling this for a long time, and now it was like a complex group, and now we got 3 species that look like what we were calling Sterium Austria. Yeah.
Okay, there is Lobatum, Fasciatum, and Hirsutum. That's a complex. Okay. All right. Thank you. I have my answer.
Sure.
Okay.
So we have to remove a lot of Austria from iNaturalist.
Me too.
So Hervé, if you go either to Maricel's or my iNaturalist page and search Sterium, we have a lot of the species on there. There's a woman, I don't remember her name off the top of my
Sarah
head.
Dugon.
Sarah Duhan, right. Sarah
Duhan.
Duhan, she's like the local North American Sterium expert. She's been
Yes.
identifying a bunch of the stuff on both Maricel and myself's iNaturalist. So you could probably get a lot of information right
Yes,
there.
I've been communicating with her.
Oh, okay.
Sarah Duhon.
Yeah, well, she knows her stuff.
Yes, she's a graduate student and she seems to know pretty much about this. Okay.
Cool.
Now I have to work about my identification skill to distinguish the different 3 species. Okay. And then clean up iNaturalist. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Hervé. Okay, so I see Ming has stuff to share, and then I'm going to go into I'm going to go into my emails now and start with some of the people that emailed me earlier. Let's start with this group: Lauren, Penny, and Maricel. Okay. So Lauren, you want to look at your Stropharia first?
Hi, sure.
Hi, Lauren.
Hello. So you guys saw this one before, but Igor had the DNA done, and I guess it's believed to be Hardii, which I think Nina guessed. I remember her saying this. But I do have questions about the process of how do you respond to things on Mushroom Observer, like when you get an email saying that somebody proposed a name and stuff like that. What is proper protocol with that?
Well,
It's,
you could,
it's just an indication to go and look at your observation and see what's been proposed, and you may agree or disagree. You can
If I have nothing
weigh in on any proposal. You can vote on any proposal, yours or anyone else's, as long as you're a registered user.
Okay, but if I don't have anything to add, is it considered rude if I don't say anything?
No, not
Okay.
at all. Not saying anything is actually, I've always taken that as meaning, oh, okay, this person, they don't disagree. So it's sort of a quiet, positive response.
Okay, all right.
so for other people, right, we can all see this now, right?
Yeah.
You can see, so I was always a little hazy about this part too. Like if I wanted to vote on this is where I would vote on that, right, Dave? Like I would go in here and say,
Yeah.
it's promising, right? Because I think
Just
it is
drop down to
promising.
whatever you want, and you can change it later on too if you want. Mhm.
Right. So I just added my opinion that I think that's promising. Igor is the one that proposed Hardy Eye based on his stuff, which I read earlier, the DNA work. And this looks like this Hardy Eye, what I would call Hardy Eye. So a big, fleshy, pretty heavy mushroom, right?
Yeah, that one's a little unusual. It's the ring is completely gone. This cap on the other one, really, I mean, these are hardy eyed, but they have that kind of dingy yellow cap. A lot of times the ring stays around for a while.
Yeah, when I was looking at the smaller one, you can see the ring right there.
Yeah,
It's pretty
yeah.
obvious that it was there, and it looks like a Stropharia type of ring, right?
Yeah, cogwheel.
Yeah, that cogwheel look to it. Maybe not. Maybe that's the best way to look at it, like this, right? You see that
Nice.
cogwheel?
Can somebody explain why I got an email from Mushroom Observer saying maybe Stropharia Hardy Eye when we have the DNA? Is that not 100%? Like I think it said 92% something or other. What does that mean?
92% is a very high percentage. It means that's pretty darn likely that's what it is. There are no 100% votes on a Mushroom Observer. If Rod Toulas comes on and says, this is, say, Amanita flavorubens, and he says, I know that's what it is, it's going to be registered as like 92% or something, or 90% or something like that. And that's to
That's
reflect,
interesting.
yeah, that's to reflect the fact that science, and in particular mycology, is open-ended. There's no dead ends. So even though we might say right now, well, this has to be Stropharia Hardy Eye based on DNA, who knows what comes around the corner 10 years from now and changes the science, and perhaps there would need to be a new proposal. You just don't know in the physical sciences. It's not mathematics. It's not a proof.
Lauren?
Okay. Do you ever, yeah?
Yeah, this is Igor. To answer your question about that generic email you get from MO, that, your observation could be something, MO doesn't know why or who, whatever, proposed the name. So they don't know the reasons. So they say that the name changed from one name to another, and the proposal could be right. Okay, so this is their estimate. They don't have all the details because it's like a computer-generated email reflecting these change in name status. Okay.
Okay.
So again, based on the evidence, on the current evidence that we have, through DNA, it seems to be Stropharia Hardy Eye. But as you saw, in what I wrote, there's a dearth of sequences of Stropharia Hardy Eye, or what people think is Stropharia Hardy Eye, in GenBank. Okay, so this is the best evidence what we have, and we could be right. But as they've said, things may change later on, especially if it's discovered that we have more than one Stropharia Hardy Eye. that there are maybe a species complex or two similar taxa that mimic one another and have been collectively called Hardii. Okay?
Okay, so do you ever see, so this one was like 92.3%. So do you ever see numbers much lower than that? And what does that mean?
No, it's not what Dave said, 93% refers to the vote confidence. When I blasted your sequence, it was essentially 100% similar to two other sequences, okay?
Oh, okay.
And both of them were, again, we're talking about different numbers, apples and oranges.
Okay.
So what Dave is saying, that when you can actually say, I call something as this, you can never get 100% accuracy mathematically. Okay? This is the algorithm that MO uses to estimate, to weigh proposals, okay?
Okay.
So there's science, there's mathematics behind it, which I have no idea where that is. Dave probably has a better idea. But the numbers I refer to in my comment are from GenBank, okay? The sequence is 99.8% similar, which means only one or two bases off out of, say, hundreds. Okay, and that's how pairwise similarity is calculated.
Okay.
Yeah, they probably have a multiple regression model that they just feed data into. And the different pieces of data then all go into this one equation, and the equation spits out a percentage. And some of the things that go in are how many proposals and how much contribution the person has made who proposed the species ID. That's in there. And that's a big part of it, really. How many people agreed with that level of confidence, that goes into the regression model. And a regression model, by the way, is an equation that it's called regression because it sort of works backwards. Usually you think of an equation as being there first, and then you get the result. But a regression model, you have data and you build an equation out of the data. It's a statistical modeling approach.
All right.
Can I ask a question about the color of the cap? I found a mushroom that I thought looked like Rugo annulata, but the cap was this color. Is the color of this cap, rule out Rugoso annulata?
No, there's
a yellow variety.
Okay.
Yeah, there's Rugoso annulata variety lutea.
Yeah, F lutea,
pale,
whatever
though.
F means. I forget what F means.
But isn't that always really pale? Like this one was very tan. This one was almost like this one was very orange. When I've seen lutea, it was very, very pale.
Yeah, there's the typical wine cap version often fades to a tan color. Sometimes they fade in blotches, and sometimes they fade pretty completely and they're very pale. But the F lutea is like, I'm not sure what the F stands for. I forget. Somebody told me and now I forget, but it's genetically the same, I believe, as the regular Stropharia rugosa annulata. It just has this yellow cap from the get-go, from the time they're buttons until the time, when they start to decay. They have a pretty vividly yellow cap. I have one of those. I a Mushroom Observer, and I think I sent it to Luke to possibly show.
By the way, F dot stands for forma or form.
No, okay.
And
So
it's
like
the
the
same
yellow
species.
form.
It's probably just a slightly mutated version, that reflects the change in the color pigment. Again, everything.
Penny, do you remember? Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. What'd you say?
I was going to ask Penny. Penny, do you remember if the mushroom you found was young?
No, it wasn't. I mean, there were several, and they were all lighter cap and different stages.
Oh, do you have a picture of that?
Unfortunately, I don't, but I'll have to look for it again.
Okay, well, we can look at Lauren's, I'm sorry, at Penny's mushroom. Because you have a regular.
Yeah, I have a regular Rugoso annulata and with different stages, and the older ones with the dark gills, and then the younger one still with the ring.
Look in the lower left. That one has a faded cap.
Oh, yeah. And then that shows the cogwheel ring.
So these two species do look pretty similar, Hardii and Rugoso annulata, but in form.
Hardii is more of a florist species in my experience, and the ring drops off more readily. And even when the ring forms, it's not as notable as the ring on Rugoso annulata, which is partly, the species name is partly based on, that having a persistent, notable ring.
Would you say was more of a forest species?
Hardii.
Yeah.
In my experience, I find that most often in forest settings.
Right.
I find Rugoso annulata in the forest once in a while, but that's kind of rare. It's usually on wood chips.
That's where this was. This was wood chips in a community garden, which is mulched with wood chips between beds.
Woody debris where, like, let's say if there's some slash and wood chips that, some woody debris that have been piled up because there's been a trail cleared or something like that. You might find them in a spot like that. I've seen them on lawn waste a few times, and sometimes even right on lawns.
Is Hardii edible?
Mixed reports on that. Some of the field guides say that it might be toxic. I've never tried eating it.
No, me either. All right.
They grow in my mulch if anybody wants to try.
All right.
Oh, you get Hardii in your mulch. Oh.
Yeah, the ones that we just showed, they grow in the mulch in my front yard.
Oh, interesting.
I also believe, I didn't do DNA or microscopy or anything, but I do believe that I saw them in front of a strip mall in mulch too. I mean, they looked exactly the same as Hardii.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, Marisol, let's start with your Stropharia rugoso annulata.
Right. Let me expand the view. All right. I really don't know anything about this observation that I have. I never got a spore print, which I will get next time that I find them. This one was found near my house on mulch, but I didn't know what was the relation there. So I thought it was with the tree. So I put the seed and the leaf of dogwood. But it was really growing on mulch, but it was at the base of a dogwood tree.
Yeah, look at how faded the one is on the right. It's almost white, except for the disc.
Oh, but look at when he's younger.
Yeah, that's not unusual.
Oh, yeah, I don't really know. And I was looking at the photos yesterday, and if you could go on the cap of the one that is very pale, the fibers on the cap are beautiful. It's really like scales sticking up.
Scales, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just the cuticle that breaks apart. I'm not sure. Not sure about that.
Yeah, I was very, I was in awe because I didn't know they had the cap like that. I can even see closer than that in my own photos. And you really see those things like coming together in a tip. That's what I saw. Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess you can, in the young one, you can kind of see the beginnings of it breaking apart.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and the color of the gills is kind of purplish, but yeah, the next time I'll make a spore print because, yeah, I have no clue. And there are remnants of the ring that you're talking about. The clog, you say? Clog?
Oh, cog wheels.
Cog.
Like it
Oh,
has like
cog.
spokes kind of. This
Can
one's a
you-
little bit eroded, but you
Yeah,
can
okay.
still see like there's these little projections along the
Mhm.
perimeter. Then those are like the cogs on a wheel.
Mhm. How do you spell that? C-O-G or
COG
oh, okay,
wheel.
okay.
It's all one word.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Mhm. Cool.
Okay, so then we can, so Bogbodia. So supposedly there's only one species in this genera.
Mhm.
Yeah, it used to
have
be in
another name.
Hyphaluma. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, it used to have other names, but they changed it to this one. And we find it many times in the pine barrens. And one day I went by myself in near Franklin Parker on the other side, and on the other side of the parking lot. And there was so much water in the holes where there are some holes along the road, and a lot of things growing there. So I went there, and it was like almost covered with the water. But I knew that it was Bogbodia. I found it before, even in what's the name, in Brenda's Burns Park, State Park. I have found it there too, and the stem is very long. I mean, this is not the great photo, but
So
some
you
of
say
them you can see.
formerly Hyphaluma, that's what you said, Dave?
Yeah, it used to be Hyphaluma udum. And in fact, if it's a good idea to collect some spores and measure them, because this species can be confused with Hyphaluma I think it's elongatum. I think that's the
Oh, okay.
one. Yeah, but this one supposedly only grows in peat. In
Yeah,
the peat
it's like-
bog.
Yeah, it's right there. Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. But I'll do the sports the next time. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a big difference between the spore size of Hyphaluma. I think it's elongatum. I have it. That'll come up later. And Bogbodia uda.
I love the name Bogbodia. What a strange name.
Yeah,
Buddha. I don't know where they got those names.
Grows
but-
in bogs.
grows in bogs, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So the only species in this genus that we know of, and it grows in New Jersey.
Wow. Cool.
Okay, so let's look at your other Hyphalumas, and then we'll come back to the Stakonica, since the Bogbodia was in Hyphaluma.
All right.
So Ladaridium.
Okay. I think that I didn't have a microscope when I had this one, but I did some drawings. But it's so bad because I couldn't make the difference between the Cholocistidia and Pleurocystidia, so it's pretty bad. But yeah, I did the spore print.
So these are brick caps.
Brick caps, you said?
Yes, the common name is brick caps.
Okay, I'm so confused at this point. I gotta do more work with these ones in the future because it's too tricky.
I think that these have Chrysocystidia. I know that Hyphaluma capnoides does, and these are very similar. And Chrysocystidia are on the gill faces. They're like Pleurocystidia, but you have to mount the gill in KOH because the KOH turns them golden yellow, and they jump right out at you then.
Yeah,
at
I
400.
only, I'm sorry, Dave. I only learned this recently, so yeah, for the future. And these were growing on mulch in front of the entrance of my work. So I wouldn't suspect they were, what's the name? Hyphalomas. That's amazing. They have come there on the same place for many years. And see, I just didn't do a good job in there, but in the future. There is some Cholocistidia, but I can't tell you from where. Couldn't tell.
All right.
I think your drawing pretty much captures something good about these wood growing Hyphalumas. at least a few of the species that have the Chrysocistidia. The Cholocistidia are small, like the one on the left. And the
Oh,
Chrysocistidia are really big. They're very big and fat. And so that's probably what you ended up looking at here.
and look at that weird forked shape. I have no idea what.
Yeah,
No
not me
clue.
there. I don't know what
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is.
No, I got a better. I'll make a better observation in the future.
And Capnoides, that's the one that we always confuse.
Yeah, I showed this, and it wasn't. Nobody recognizes this as Capnoides. This is growing on a Pinus rigidus stump, and I thought that because it was growing on pine, it's supposed to be what I said, but nobody agrees. Hyphaluma capnoides, and it was huge. But I didn't do any micro because I thought it was what I thought. Hyphaluma capnoides.
It's really hard to tell Capnoides and Ladaridium apart.
So the substratum doesn't mean anything then.
I'm sorry, but what doesn't?
The wood, the type of wood they're growing on.
That's supposed to be the most telling
Yeah.
difference.
Mhm.
But then some people will tell you that Ladaridium sometimes grows on conifer wood. But when I find Ladaridium, it's when I can identify the wood, it's always hardwood.
Mhm.
But this does look like Ladaridium. Look how tight the gills are. The cap color it's got that brick red cap color, but I don't know. It
Or
could
I
be
wonder,
Capnoides.
see, or I wonder if I misidentified the stump because it's covered with the needles, but it could be an oak because in that property is pine barrens, and there are oaks and
Oaks.
pine trees.
You know what? I think that might be
The case?
what's going on here. Yeah.
So it will be what name? No capnoides.
It would be Ladaridium.
Ladaridium. Okay, I'll change it. I may be wrong. Yep.
Well, put both proposals up there if you can. I don't know. I don't use
No, you
iNaturalist.
can't.
Oh, you can't.
It's only one name.
Oh, that's something I like better about Mushroom Observer
Yeah.
though, because you can see alternatives.
Mhm.
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 It seems on the internet or on the book I refer to, the Capnoides is actually more yellow. I mean, for whatever in this observation, it's I agree with Dave, is more like a Ladaridium because the color is like much like a close to red.
And what about the size? Because this was huge.
Size, it can grow very, very big actually.
Ladaridium?
I think both Ladaridium and Capnoides can get fairly big, but I've seen really big Ladaridium.
This
You know,
is
with like 5-inch wide caps. It's not typical, but I've seen it. I've never seen Capnoides that big,
Okay.
but
I
they
read
grow.
similar. Yeah.
They're both pretty big.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah, well, compared to other Hyphalumas, most of them are pretty small caps.
Next time probably you can have a taste because it said that Ladaridium it has a like slightly bitter, but if you have Capnoides, it's actually choice edible. I mean, on the book I read, it looks like it's a good edible.
Okay.
Actually, locally where I live, there's quite a few people who eat Ladaridium. Probably because it's easy to identify based on the cap color. You have to be careful you don't confuse Capnoides with Fasciculare or
Sulfur Tough.
Yeah, Sulfur Tough. There's another one, Subviride. That's another one too.
Mhm.
You have to be careful.
So Hyphaluma fasciculare.
I tried the Hyphaluma Ladaridium, so the brick cap. I don't like it because I think the one I had is very old, so it's very firm when I had it. A little bit bitter. I mean, it doesn't really like make me feel bad, but it's just like pretty firm. The flesh
What
is
I've
very firm.
heard is the taste is not as good when it's older.
Yes, it's like chewing leather. That's what it is.
Oh.
Bitter leather.
That doesn't sound very
Bill,
good.
Bill Russell, in his book, he says Ladaridium is better after it gets cold, after it's frosted. And then they're not so
Oh,
bitter.
interesting.
And that's the only time I've ever eaten them, and they were pretty good.
Oh,
I've
do you
collected
eat
them-
the stems on those, Luke?
I don't think so. I think it's just the stipe.
That
I mean, I'm
might
sorry,
be
just
where,
the cap,
the
just the cap.
toughness is coming from, maybe the stems.
Yes.
So
Aha.
this is an interesting observation, Marisol, because look how red these are. Because usually I don't see them this red, but they always say they can be quite red.
Oh. And they got this greenish touch on the gills. So is it right? My idea, is it right?
I think so, and they're
Oh,
bitter.
okay.
If you taste them,
Yeah.
they're bitter. Yeah, the
I
green
did,
gills
yeah.
is what gives these away.
Uh,
But there's another one called subviridi or subviride
Mhm.
that has green gills also. So that's a tough one to tell apart from
Okay.
fasciculari.
So isn't the difference
I'm-
between those two, again, back to the substrate, that this one, fasciculari, grows on conifer and
Oh, I don't
The-
know.
the other one grows on, that's what Garrett Taylor told me.
Oh, okay.
oh, okay.
I mean, I always take everything people tell me with a grain of salt, but we know Garrett.
Mhm.
He knows stuff pretty well. I read on Mushrooms Expert about it, and it wasn't very clear on there. But anyway, so this one, the Sulfur Tough. These are good. This is a good observation because look, you can also see the caps, kind of how yellow they are,
Mhm.
but definitely showing some of that red. So this one is pretty poisonous, right? It's supposed to give you some really bad stomach problems, GI upset. And this is the one that they always tell you if you're collecting brick caps that you have to really be careful that you don't confuse the two together. If you're collecting Ladaridius or the Capnoides, that you don't confuse it with this species. But again, as Steve pointed out, this yellow greenish gill is what really is supposed to separate it out.
Yeah, they're also bitter from what I understand. I've never actually tasted them because as soon as I see the green gills, I figure, okay, that's what it is. I'll have to try tasting it if I find it again.
I tried it before. It's very bitter. I mean, just to like chew a little bit, it's very bitter. So
Oh, okay, good. Good to have a first-hand account. Thanks.
Okay, so those are your Hyphaluma, and then we have Stakonica, Caprophila.
The only reason why I call this the Conica Caprophila is because I posted this and somebody from the New York club told me that this was this. I have no idea if it is or not. But I think that I read about it and it grows. This is the horse dung in Franklin Park along the road. It was full of them. So you can see. And it looks like Bogbodia uda. It looks very close. The one that
That's
was in
what
the
I call it. But this is Taxonica Caprophila. Yeah,
yeah, it looks like that.
I've got an observation of this
Oh,
too. It
okay.
looks just like this on horse dung.
Mhm. Yep.
so it's grow on horse dung, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, directly on the drop.
that's
droppings.
amazing. Yep.
Cool.
Mhm.
All right. I think
Thank
that was
you.
everything, right?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks.
All right, great. Thanks, Marcel.
Mhm.
I'm curious as to what specific compounds are found in horse dung that would make this mushroom prefer to grow in that as opposed to other substrates.
I don't know.
Oh, you mean like type of dung? Yeah, that's a good question.
Like why not deer or
Maybe
So
something in the
cow.
horse's diet.
Yeah, because deer dung, there is very few mushrooms that we've ever come across on forages that would ever go near that. But then when you go to horse or cow, like it's all over.
Well, horse, they don't digest their what they eat as well, I think. And for example, there's a lot of seeds and weeds that grow out of horse dung when you use it in a garden. So I don't know, maybe part of it is how much organic matter, actual plant matter is still in the horse dung. That's my guess anyway.
That sounds like a good hypothesis to me.
One of mine is it could be also the bacteria present in the GI tract, differs from animal to animal, allowing for blockage from other competition or breaking down of other nutrients to allow for easier absorption.
Yeah, that too.
Okay, so I have 4 here. This one I called Stakonica subvicida. Subvicida. I'm not 100% confident in this. I did do a fair amount of work on it, and this was the best I could get it to. I don't remember what my
Este
reference is.
substratum,
I'm sorry?
where was it growing on?
Growing in mulch.
Oh, okay.
This is in mulch. I was reading that to see if I had a reference in there. I don't remember I got this name. This is from a few years ago. I had this on Mushroom Observer too, but nobody had any opinions about it. So
the mushrooms look a little like Gallerinas, but boy, those spores certainly look like Stakonica, and the print's going to be a different color, of course. You can show those spores again, Luke. The spores for Stakonica are really interesting. They have different shapes depending upon the profile. Sometimes they look like a rhombus, which is sort of a 4-sided figure where the sides are almost the same size and the 2 pairs of parallel sides.
Oh yeah, I have seen those.
Yeah, the psilocybe mushrooms, some of those have that too. But it's a different profile. It's going to look like an ellipse. So they're kind of interesting spores, Stakonicas. I don't know if all of the Stakonica spores are like that, but you can see it in this sample right here. That's a pretty good evidence for genus Stakonica, I would say, and the spore print color as well. Which Gallerina is going to be a rusty brown, and these are going to be really dark, grayish brown kind of, I guess, or purplish maybe.
Yeah, the habitat doesn't look very much like Gallerina. So.
Oh, you get Gallerinas on wood chips sometimes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, sometimes. Not mostly they're on stumps and logs, but
Yes.
sometimes. And then there's a Tubaria also. That's another one, that could be confused with these. But spore print color, once again, that would be a lot different.
okay, Hyphaluma Elongatum. This is from the Pine Barrens.
Ooh.
Picture sideways, but
Look at that stipe.
yep, really, really long.
Hyphaluma
Elongatum.
Same kind of habitat as Bogbodia. They grow in boggy, mossy areas. Usually, I mean, that's where I find them.
So look at the gills on this. I noticed this with some of the Stropharia that we're looking at, the kind of distinct like purplish black, but also the modeling.
Yeah, this looks very, very pretty.
Yeah, once they're mature, when they're young, the gills can be very pale.
Oh, oh, I love the proportion between the size of the head and the stipe is so long.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Some of the spores. I guess that is it. Okay, this one Stropharia cornella. I think somebody just gave me this name and I looked it up. I kind of did a really quick, it was in my front yard, my house, and I was like running out the door to go to work and I saw these in the neighbor's yard and I ran over there and took a really quick picture of it and then went to work, and of course they were burned up by the time I got home in the blazing sun all day. Again, the distinct kind of like purplish mottled gills in the annulus. And the top of the cap, they're already a little beat up.
Supposedly it should look very yellow if it is young specimen from the literature I'm looking at.
Yeah, cornella.
Yeah, I mean it's like this yellow.
It may not always be that color. There's with some species of mushroom, cap color is a range of colors. But these look kind of old too, so these are probably bleached out.
A little faded.
Mhm.
Yeah, I remember Patricia McNaught. She taught me a lot about mushrooms when I first joined the club. She always stressed to me that cap color was one of the least dependable, identification features in mushrooms. Important, but not, so variable that I had to kind of put it low amongst the other things I'm looking at. So I didn't do any work on this one, but that is.
Fits the profile.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like it. But I should say I didn't do any
look
work
on a lawn. That species grows on lawns.
I should say I didn't do any work beyond just the macroscopic features and comparing it to some other photos and descriptions. I didn't do any microscopy on it. And then the last one that I put in here was, I just threw this one into Subverity just because that was a name that Garrett Taylor put in there, right? He's saying if it's on hardwood, he thinks it's Subverity. I called it Fasculari at first.
So the difference between these two will be the type of wood. And they look very close?
They look very close.
Okay.
That's what, again, Garrett Taylor mentioned. You see the spore print on that one. And I did do some reading on this on Mushroom Expert. And, Michael Quo says this is a more southern species, but extending up the range of the Appalachian Mountains, kind of into the mid-Atlantic states a little bit. So that kind of fits the area where I was in, Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Otherwise, things like spore size and other features like that were not helpful at all. Spore sizes are so close.
Oh, I see.
I may have saved a dried one of these, thinking that it might be worth sequencing. So anyway, I take that name with a grain of salt, but
yeah, but from the picture, like in the reference online, it looks actually very similar to Hyphaluma fasciculari. So it's very much, it looks very similar to the Sulfur Tough by just the look.
Right. And again, that's what I would have normally called it right off the bat.
Mm.
But it was
So
most
can
definitely.
Can you say it again why he put into the Subverity?
Because of the substrate.
Substrate. Okay.
Yes, this was growing on beech.
Okay.
Whereas,
that beech tree. Okay.
Yes, whereas the other one, the fasculari, grows on conifer.
Okay.
So just some food for thought there. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. Ming, you said you had some stuff that you wanted to share.
Yeah, I have a very interesting one, but so when I check on the internet, actually it says it does not, the family is actually not clear. Let me take a look. So family is actually unknown, but the name is, so let me share my screen. Oh, give me a second, I'm looking at the, so this is the mushroom, and let me check what was the time. So that was in June 25th. It was in Ringwood State Park. And so I was actually pretty disappointed on that day because it was still early in the season. But surprisingly, when I turn around, I see there is a mushroom actually grow. It actually grow where the ruler is. So in the beginning, I thought it was what is it called? Pholiota, because I don't have. It looks interesting. I thought it was okay, Pholiota, because that's the only thing. Because I'm not familiar with this thing, and I thought it was Pholiota. So I put on the iNaturalist. Nobody gave opinion. And then Mr. Christian Schwartz from California, he suggested it's called Hemistropharia.
That's what it is. Was that a maple tree? Or an oak or something? Was that the bottom of?
I don't know. I think it's what is it? It's definitely a broadleaf. I don't know if it is a maple. I'm very bad at trees, but anyway. But when I go,
what it is.
Yeah. I took very because I was very confused. I don't know what it is. I was trying to collect for a spore print, but that day was very hot. So I put in a container, I seal it in a plastic. When I went back, when I got back home, it was just rot. So I feel bad, but anyway.
Oh, did you use a plastic bag, like a sandwich bag or something?
Not plastic bag, the box. But I
Oh, you know what to do? Drill little holes in your plastic box so that air can circulate a little bit.
Yes. I figured out a way later. So I put some paper towel on the top and I do not close it. But anyway.
Okay, now you shouldn't feel so bad. Here, you know why? This used to be in genus Pholiota.
Oh, really?
Yes, until, I don't know, 20 years ago or something. Yeah, it used to be in Pholiota.
So how did you recognize that was Hemistropharia?
Oh, I
know it because I find it sometimes.
Oh, okay.
Dark brown cap. It's sort of a darker shade. It looks like a Pholiota, but it's darker on the cap. That pretty much that's it. It's just like a darker colored Pholiota.
And then the stalk is got all the
it's got a lot of ornamentation on it, but a lot of the Pholiotas do too. So that's another thing that makes it look like a Pholiota.
I'm just reading.
You know, sometimes it's hard to explain why a mushroom is recognizable. And sometimes people will say it's the Gestalt, right? A word borrowed from psychology, which says that you're supposed to consider the organism as a whole. And sometimes you just look at the whole thing and you know from experience, because you've seen many of them, that, and this is a pretty good example of that, really. I don't see a whole lot of these, but I do see them occasionally, and they grow on my property. So there's an old maple tree on my property, and I find them there. Like every other year, I'll find one or two of them.
Interesting. One thing I just wanted to know that this mushroom, the cap is actually very slimy. It's a very, very slimy cap.
Yeah, it's a sticky, slimy cap, but once again, there's Pholiotas that are like that too.
Oh, so, really?
Yes. Pholiota lenta, but that doesn't look anything like this. One of the ones, sharp scaly or scaly, Squaroides or Squarosa, one of those has a sticky cap. Aurivella. The one that you can really confuse this with would be the Limonella aurivella group. And those are lighter colored though, but they look a lot like this otherwise. And those are sticky, slimy.
Hmm.
And they grow right on wood, right on trees usually. But they're
Oh,
light,
so
they're like a
this is
light tan yellow sort of.
so is
Yeah,
this
I'm sorry, go ahead.
saprobic? Is this saprobic or mycorrhizal?
No, this is saprobic. One might even be partly a parasite. I don't know.
Oh,
The reason I say that is because what the maple tree I find it growing on is still alive.
hmm.
But it's probably a saprobe for the most part.
So
I think yeah.
I'm reading on Wikipedia right now that it lacks Chrysocistidia, so that helps separate it from Pholiota. If we remember from last week, the Chrysocistidia are those cystidia that turn yellow in KOH.
Oh, those are on Pholiota also. I didn't
Yep.
even know that. I'll try to remember that.
Oh,
Yes.
which means a good way to do is to use a microscope then?
Yeah, and the spore print color is different. Foliotas have like a rusty brown or a brown spore print. This has a spore print that looks like a Stropharia spore print. It's dark. It's
Dark,
like a dark gray brown.
Sure.
It also says on Wikipedia that the family is unknown.
That
Po-
yes, that's
possi-
why
That's what
Possibly,
Ming was saying. Yeah.
that's
They don't know
why I
where to
don't
put
know
it.
like to share this as a Stropharia. I don't
No.
know like if it's correct, but
no, well, you might as well because it wasn't Strophariaceae until kind of recently. They say it's maybe Hymenogastraceae, which is like what's in that? Psilocybes are in them, or Tubariae.
sure. Okay, this is all I have for today. So
Cool. That was a good one. That's one I don't think we were going to say. Okay. So Dave has a bunch of observations to fill in the gaps for the ones that we have not looked at. I want to ask again before we go into there if anybody else has any that they would like to share from this family. Okay. We're going to go into Dave's observations.
Yeah, we could probably skip quite a few of them, the ones that we've already seen.
Yeah, let's
We haven't seen many Agrosibes, and Agrosibes are things I find often.
Yeah.
This Agrosibe pedioides is one of the most common mushrooms I find in the mid-spring to late spring. Like right after morels, I start finding these on my yard, in fields, and it's an LBM basically. It's got big spores, attached gills, brown spore print, not real dark brown, but cigar brown. Sometimes I might call an Agrosibe print. The spores are pretty big, as you can see here, and there's another thing we'll see here in the next photo. See, the spores are pretty big. They looks like they're got up to about 13 or 14 microns, which is pretty big. By the way, this photo is through a microscope at 400 times magnification. So you have to, each gradation is 2.5 microns. So a lot of times the Agrosibe will have these Hymenial Cystidia. I call them pot-bellied. I think there's probably a more technical name for this shape, but a lot of Agrosibe Hymenial Cystidia look somewhat like this guy right here. So we'll see. We can move on. I guess we're going to see probably more Cystidia of Agrosibe. So this is a lawn mushroom, basically, lawns and fields.
The gills are the gills are spaced.
Yeah, sometimes they're a little closer, but yeah, the gills are kind of widely spaced on pedioides. Yeah, maybe subdistant.
Oops. Did it have another name before?
There was another species that was considered to be different, and I forget the name. Hiamali, maybe, I forget. And they lumped them. There were two species, and they were separated on the basis of size of the fruit body, I think. And they were lumped into pedioides. I think there still might be some people who disagree with that. Yeah, there is another name. I forget the other name.
Right.
Okay, praecox.
So praecox is a complex. But if you find an agrosity in the spring and it's got a partial veil, which usually leaves an annulus, like these guys, and these are pretty big ones. And I think these were in June. I think I found these in June. You can see they have, some of them still have the annulus on the stalk. Cigar brown spore print. I don't know if I found any. And I think the spores go up to like 10 microns. I forget. You know, it's hard to remember all these little details. So I'm always looking in books and online, you know, to refresh my memory. So you can see some of these have the partial veil still intact. These were pretty big ones, and there were a lot of them. Boy, there must have been 100 of them in a not a very large area. So these were
Dave?
found last spring. Yes.
I love the tone of the gills. Is there a kind of pinkish tone there?
Yeah, they're just starting to mature.
Oh, okay.
So the gills start out whitish, you know, beigey sort of, and then they start to get a little darker as the spores mature. So these guys right here are just beginning to mature. Some of the other ones in the other photo were mature, some were past maturity, and then you see much darker gills.
Dave, and
Yes.
another thing that I noticed is, yeah, close to the stipe, the color of the gills change, and it's weird. Yeah.
That might just be the way the light is reflecting.
But
I'm
look at
not
the
sure.
other
I'm not
ones.
sure if that's really a feature.
Look.
Let's-
On the other ones.
the little, you know what? Those little decurrent teeth, maybe
Yeah.
they're sterile. They might be
See,
sterile.
they're not maturing that. Yeah, that's
Yeah, they might be sterile. That's a very, very interesting thing to point out. Yeah, I didn't really think about what that would mean. Yeah, because look, the little, so for those of you learning the vocabulary here that you see in the book sometimes, this is a decurrent tooth. These gills are attached. They're notched to almost adnate, meaning they're attached by pretty much almost their entire width. But there's a little notch before the attachment. And then after the attachment, there's this part that travels down the stalk. Now in the picture, it looks like traveling up, you know, because the mushrooms are inverted. But that's called a decurrent tooth.
Oh, I didn't know that. Nice.
I don't know if I got any micro on these. Probably, I usually, and these are not, the partial veil hasn't broken yet. So these are all in one patch. And those are a little more mature.
If you show
Those
those one
guys-
which the veil still there, I would think it's Lepiota.
Well, maybe macro lepiota. Lepiotas are mostly small, dainty mushrooms. Macro lepiota, but they don't really look like, the partial veil is different on a macro lepiota. It's a little more ornamented. See, look at this big one here with the.
Oh, you know what? Probably I would think it's Agaricus. So yes.
Yeah,
we-
okay, yeah, oh, yes.
Mhm.
It would, I think that some beginners would be apt to confuse Agrosibia and Agaricus. The difference being that Agaricus always have free gills, completely free gills. They don't meet the stalk at all.
Uh-huh.
So you can see these have gills that are attached. Otherwise, the spore print color is pretty similar. As you pointed out, the partial veil is pretty similar to the partial veil you'll see on some types of Agaricus. Agaricus is a real big genus. And Richard Kerrigan's book is almost 1,000 pages long. You know, that's just on the genus Agaricus. So there's the spores. I think they go up to pretty much close to 10 microns. They have a germ pore. So sometimes, here's another vocabulary word for you. Some of these spores we would call truncate. So on the one end, it's just like chopped off. It's like somebody took like an axe or something and chopped off the one end of the spore.
Max.
Yeah, so truncate. Yeah, it would have to be a very
Mhm.
small axe.
Yes. Oh,
There was a question there about decurrent tooth. I didn't quite see that. You just go ahead and ask if you want.
Yeah, you said the current kind of gill there, was that an infertile
I
surface
don't
of some
I don't
kind?
know. Maricel's question, one potential answer to her question is that that part of the gill is fertile. Now, you know what would be interesting next spring, if I remember, I always tell myself I'm going to do this next time I find this mushroom. And then by the time spring rolls around, there's like 50 different things I'm trying to remember. But it would be interesting to take one of those decurrent tooth things and put it under the microscope and see if I can find Basidia. So something to try to remember for the future.
The reason we were speculating that it might be sterile is because see how white they are?
Mhm.
The rest of it's got the color of the spores.
Mature.
Yeah, when these guys are young, the entire gill is pretty pale, you know, fairly pale, beigey, whitish. But you can see there that, you know, the outer parts of the gills are darkening, but those decurrent tooth parts are not. Here's some mature and post-mature ones, and the gills are pretty dark. These are all the same species. They were all growing in one great big patch that was maybe 6 square yards. It was a good sized patch. These grow on woody debris, a lot of times on the ground, but ground that is that has a lot of woody debris mixed in with it. So they are saprobic. You usually don't find them directly on like stumps and things. So it's usually on the ground or in wood chips, woody debris. Now, Agrocybe acericola is very similar to Agrocybe praecox, the ones we just saw. And this is a later mushrooms. You can see I got this one in September. It's usually a little bit, it's not as big usually as praecox, but it looks pretty similar otherwise. It's got a ring. The partial veil, if you find them before the partial veil breaks, the partial veil looks very much like those partial veils you just saw on the praecox. This is a late season mushroom though. I usually don't find it until at least July and more likely August, September. And it's more of a woodland mushroom. And you'll find it, I think Gary Linkoff called it maple agrocybe or something like that because he thought that it always grew on maple wood. But you can see here it also has the truncate spores. That's with the germ pore. These spores are probably a little smaller, I'd say, than the praecox. The Q is probably bigger. So what do I mean by Q being bigger? That's the ratio of the length to the width. And these spores look like they're thinner, perhaps, than the Agrocybe praecox spores. But otherwise, pretty similar. Pretty similar species.
Do you find these in the big gigantic troops like you do the praecox?
You know, that's a very good question because the answer is no. Yeah, I usually find just 1 or 2 of these, and a lot of times they're connected to the bottom of a log on the ground or something. They tend to grow a little. Yeah, they grow differently than praecox. That's a good observation. So let's see. Did I find a cystidium with these things? Oh, there we go. Yeah. It's just not showing up really well. Let's see if it gets enlarged, maybe.
No, can't seem to find it there.
Yeah, you can sort of see it there. It's got the pot belly and then this little projection at the apex. So most of the Agrocybe Hymenial Cystidia that I find I call them pot bellied. So pretty similar to the last species we saw.
All right. You have any more Agrocybe in here? Oh, yeah.
There are. Okay, so here you go.
Yeah, let's look at these
Here you
Agrocybe.
go. A mushroom in family Strophariaceae that does not have a partial veil. No partial veil on Agrocybe pharma. It's from the get-go, you know, you're not going to see a partial veil on it. And there's another one as well that's Putaminum. I think that's on my list too. Look at all these rhizomorphs on the bottom of of stock. Those rhizomorphs were in the substrate, which these guys grow usually on well-decayed logs. Sometimes on the ground also, if there's an awful lot of mulch in the ground. And this is another feature, I think, that is typically associated with the Strophariaceae. There's a lot
Oh,
of them
do you-
that have rhizomorphs, basal rhizomorphs.
Do you call those rhizomorphs instead of mycelia because they're thicker?
Yeah, they're like strings. Hmm.
I guess we would,
Technically, I'm not sure what's different, to be honest, but just from a visual point of view, yeah, that's the difference.
aren't rhizomorphs or bands of mycelia that are strung together? Because you wouldn't,
Okay, that makes sense.
because you can't see individual strands of mycelium.
Yeah,
It's
that's
only
right.
One cell.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Good explanation.
These are interesting. I would not peg these as Agrassibi.
Yeah, they're a strange one. And they're a woodland species. I find them like once every 2 or 3 years. They're a late season mushroom, usually August, September. I don't know when did I find these? I'm gonna guess late August. Let's see. Oh, September, oh, October. Okay, yeah, that's kind of late.
Firma.
Burma. Yeah, I don't know if I did any microscopy on these.
No, just these two pictures.
Oh, I should have. Oh, well, maybe next year. Sometimes I just have so many mushrooms at home. It's just, there's not enough time to look at all of them.
Especially October, right?
Yeah, oh, God, especially like the October we just had, there were so many mushrooms. So this one is a species that showed up about 6 years ago. And I had never seen it before. And then on some recently spread wood chips in an urban area, downtown Wilkes-Barre near King's College, they have like these ornamental gardens right along Main Street, and they spread mulch and wood chips every year. And the one year they spread wood chips and mulch, and it must have had this Agrassibi Putaminum, I'm not sure if that's how you say it, mycelium in it, because there were an awful lot of them growing along with Stropharia rugosa annulata F. lutea. They were all growing in the same area. You can see the pine needles here. There's an ornamental pine tree there. That pine tree probably has nothing to do with these mushrooms being here. These also lack a partial veil. No partial veil on this species. This one also, I believe, if you can get a close up on the stalk, especially near the apex, is kind of longitudinally striate, meaning it's got like these lines running down. And also those lines seem to almost be an extensions of each one of a decurrent tooth, but not quite. But you can see the stalk has these lines running, lengthwise. So that would be called longitudinally striate. And I haven't seen them. I haven't seen this species now for the last couple of years. So maybe they just used up all the nutrients in that area and stopped fruiting. But there were an awful lot of them for a while. And I think our spores here are going to be typical Agrassibi spores. And it's actually, I should be saying Agrassibi, not Agrassibi. Sorry. But see, they're truncate spores, right? Germ pore, truncate. So, yeah, microscopically, Agrassibi mushrooms can be pretty similar to one another. So what did I get here? Did I find some Cystidia? Oh, these Cystidia are a little bit different. They're not quite pot-bellied. These are more like bowling pins. And I know there's there's a technical term for that, and I forget what it is. Oh, I'm sorry. These are Cholocistidia. Correction. These are not Hymenial Cystidia. This is another feature that separates Agroscibe putaminum, maybe from some of the others, are these abundant Cholocistidia. These cystidia were found on the upper part of the stalk. So some mushrooms will have what's called Cholocistidia on the upper part of the stalk. And that's an example there of some Cholocistidia. And Cholocistidia often are in bunches like that. And you can see them with the naked eye sometimes. It'll just be like a fuzziness on the upper part of the stalk. So that's that species, which I haven't seen now for a few years. I did not try eating them. They were from an ornamental garden anyway, so who knows what was put on that. Now, if you through all the Agroscibes, you might want to look at that Cyclocybe, because that's a split off of Agroscibe. Cyclocybe erebia used to be Agroscibe erebia, and in many of the older field guides, it's going to be listed as Agroscibe erebia. So maybe we can look at that one next. Oh, there's actually another, you know what? I think there's actually 2 more Agroscibes that I have here. I find a lot of Agroscibes.
Yeah, this was labeled as Agroscibe, but it's
Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
The Cholocistidia that you say are on the stalk.
Cholocistidia.
Cholocistidia.
Caul.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you take if you were going to do like microscopy on those, would you take the section from the tooth? Or
no,
would you
just
take
the upper part of the stalk.
Okay,
just the upper part of the stalk. You can usually see like a little fuzziness or graininess on the upper part of the stalk.
But you would
just try to get some of that
off with a razor or something, like just
use a razor and try to get a really, really thin slice. So what you're looking at isn't, it's not cluttered up with a bunch of like hyphae and stuff.
Yeah, but it's from the actual stipe, and
yes,
like
from the actual
sort of where that decurrent tooth would be.
Yeah, a little bit below that maybe.
Okay.
Some mushrooms have Cholocistidia that go fairly far down the stalk, but usually they're more concentrated near the apex.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right.
So this is a fairly rare species in my experience, and also in the literature, the field guides and stuff, you don't see this species mentioned very often. I found it once. I found it during morel season. In fact, I was leaving one of my morel spots and walking back to my car, and these guys were in this like disturbed open field. These are an Agroscibe. These kind of look a fair amount different than the others. Maybe a little bit like Pediades. I'm not even sure. I think these probably have a partial veil. I'm not sure of that. I forget. It's been a while since I found these, and I just ran across the observation on Mushroom Observer, and so I thought it would be a good one to share because it's just sort of an interesting species. And those are some Hymenial Cystidium. These have really long necks. Look at that one, has that really long neck, but it's got a pot belly. There's your pot belly Cystidium. So these are pretty interesting species. Only found it once, in my many years of looking at, for mushrooms. And look at the spores are kind of small too. They do have the germ pore. They're not, I would not call these truncate, but there is a germ pore. You can, a lot of times it depends on how the spore is aligned, right? Whether or not you're going to see the germ pore. So they don't look all the same, but some of them you can see a germ pore. Once again, it's brown spore print, cigar brown spore print. Spore print colors for Agroscibes are pretty much all the same. Not a rusty brown, more of a cigar brown. And I think there's one more Agroscibe here.
No, I think it was it.
Oh, I didn't get it up there. Okay, there is another one.
But you say Cyclocybe? Is a split off from Grossi?
Cyclocybe, right? Yeah, that used to be a Grossi. Yeah, there's another one that I forgot to put it up here. This I find in my yard. I find it in the woods sometimes. It's a late season mushroom. I usually don't see it any earlier than mid-September, usually more likely in October. It's got a partial veil. Partial veil breaks, and sometimes it leaves a ring, and sometimes the ring drops off. It's usually kind of dark colored on the cap, but it fades. It's hygrothnous, meaning the cap fades as it loses moisture. So these are kind of dark. So I guess I must have found these not that long after a rain, or maybe after a dewy morning. But there's the one right in the middle there. You can see it's kind of faded. I don't know why these are cyclocybe and not agrosibe. Okay, probably DNA puts these into a different part of a phylogenetic tree than agrosibe, but they're pretty closely related. These have weird spores. It seems to vary with collection. But some of them, sometimes I'll get spores with really prominent snout. So not just a germ pore and not truncate, but instead of truncate at the germ pore end, there's a snout. So you can see on some of these, some more than others, right on the end where the germ pore is, there's like a little bit of a snout sticking out. Now, sometimes you get a collection where the snout is really prominent. These right here, you can see what I'm talking about a little bit. If you go to the end of the arrow, go in two gradations to the left. Yeah, and then straight up from that, the first one straight up from that. Yeah, that one right there, you can see this kind of has a snout. Michael Quo has picture of Cyclocybe aeribia spores on Mushroom Expert that have really prominent snouts. And he might still be calling them agrosibe aeribia. I'm not sure. So that's those guys. Find them on my lawn. Every year I find these on my lawn. Same area, probably from some buried roots. I don't know if I found any cystidia for those. I'm not sure.
No, it was just spore prints.
Just those. Okay. Oh, that's enough for the agrosity types.
Got it. So what else do we have in here?
Well, we've seen Bogbodia. Stakonica phylogena has interesting spores. These are hardcore LBMs. Okay, they're really fit the little brown mushroom profile very well. They're little, they're brown, and you look at them and you say, how can I ever identify that thing? And well, microscopically, they have some telling traits. And this is this is the remains of a husk from a hickory nut. So the outer part, like the green part of a hickory nut that covers the hickory nut shell. And so they grow on woody debris, nut, old debris from nuts. I find them in the same area on my property and the adjoining property where there are some shagbark hickory trees. You can see they look a little bit like a Psilocybe, Ceruleipes really, but they don't stain blue. The habitat is pretty similar. And so I didn't know what these were when I first found them, and Alan Rockefeller helped identify these for me on Mushroom Observer. So he deserves the credit for that one because I didn't know what they were. But once you get pointed in the right direction here, then you start finding some things that are telling. Not so much the morphology, because basically they're like an LBM, they could be like a tubaria or something. But look at the spores. Like Luke's Stakonica from before. Look at how the spores show different shapes depending upon how they're profiled. So look at some of them look like a little rhombus. Oops. Some of them look like a little rhombus, some of them are ellipsoid, and the dimensions are sort of variable, and that's because of the way they're differently profiled. Pretty small spores. The spore print is dark, grayish, purplish brown, probably purplish brown, I think. Might be the best description for this spore print. And I find these almost every spring. Usually June, early July, late spring, into the first part of the summer. Usually I'll go out every morning. I can walk out my back door and find mushrooms. It's pretty cool. And these guys, and they'll come out, and they'll be around for a day or two and they'll disappear, and then you'll see more of them. So you can see here, it's a woody debris sapro. It's on a little tiny stick there. And I think these guys have a lot of Cholocistidia. I'm not sure if I got a picture of them.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I guess not. I think I have some other observations on Mushroom Observer where I got pictures of Cholocistidia. I think they're really small, the Cholocistidia for these guys.
Is
You know
that
what?
a
Show
lot
my
of-
Hyphaluma Elongatum, because that looks a little different than yours. And in moss, long stems, I think elongatum refers to the elongated stipe. So I guess that doesn't look all that different than what you showed, Luke.
Yeah, a little redder.
Yeah, a little redder maybe. Sometimes I find them, they're very yellow. But I think they probably change color. These are hygrophanous. So they sort of change color when they dry out. And I don't know, did I get any micro on this? I think I got something. But these look a lot like Bogbodia uda to me, really. In fact, I'm usually not sure until I take them home and measure spores. And I think it's the Bogbodia has the really big spores that go up to like 14 microns. These guys are more or less go up to about 11 microns, I think. So that's a major difference. Otherwise, pretty similar. Spore print colors are very similar. You know what? I think I saw the other Agrosity down here someplace. And I think there is one more.
Here, let's look at Bogbodia again.
Oh, the Bogbodia, yeah, Bogbodia uda. This is the picture that Alan Rockefeller lifted it off Mushroom Observer and put it on the wiki page for the species, Bogbodia uda. And this was right after they had changed the name. So you can see here, I originally proposed Hyphaluma udum. And they do look to me a fair amount like Hyphaluma elongatum. So these were growing there's this lake I go fishing and camping there sometimes. And it used to be a peat bog, and they scooped all the peat out to fire some ammunition factories during World War II. And after they used up most of the peat, they built a dam and let it fill in. And you can see, look at how big these spores are. They're shaped differently as well. Those aren't shaped like Hyphaluma spores. So the Q is very big. The Q looks like it's probably over 2.5, meaning the ratio of length to width. But those are long spores also. I think they're probably even beyond 14 microns.
Would you also say the stipe on this is a little tougher?
That I don't know. Sometimes I find Hyphaluma elongatum and the stipe is very fragile, and sometimes it's a little more resilient. And I think probably the same can be said for these as well. But that's a good question. I'm not really sure if there's a difference, a consistent difference. But you can see they do look a lot like Hyphaluma elongatum. Oh, here we go. Here's a good one that you probably don't find very in New Jersey. Laradiomyces squamosus variety Thrustus.
Yeah, that's a nice one.
It used to be a psilocybe. It's poisonous. All reports say it's poisonous. You shouldn't try eating this thing. I have one place where I find this, and it's Ricketts Glen State Park. I didn't find it this year. I don't think I found it last year either. It's a really showy mushroom. It's got this big red cap surface. Sometimes it's really pumpkin orange. These are a little browner than usual, these two. It's got a partial veil that leaves a ring, and the ring usually drops off. But they're pretty big mushrooms. They grow on wood, usually very well decayed wood. Sometimes it seems like they're on the ground, but it's really just because there's a lot of wood there. And I don't think I did any micro on these. These were kind of old. So they get these scaly caps. I think that's where the squamosus comes from. I'm not sure. So I guess you can call these little decorations on the cap squamules. And I think the stems are kind of squamulose as well. Oh, I got some spores from these. Okay. Oh,
Maybe. Oh, there it is.
maybe. Yeah, I wonder what happened there.
Oh, it just doesn't want to show the original image.
Just doesn't want to show it. Is that a really old observation? I don't think it is. Some of the really old mushroom observer observations, oh no, it's not that old, 2019. Okay, well, whatever. You know, I didn't do any other micro with these, I don't think. But they're pretty cool to find. These have a very fibrous stalks. So
the color of the gills is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of greenish
Yeah.
sometimes. Yeah, sometimes grayish. I think when they're a little more mature, they start to get more gray. I think they start out pretty pale, almost white. But yeah, that is kind of interesting, this little greenish tinge. I'm not sure if that's a consistent trait. I'm not sure why.
Is there any type of bruising on this? Is that why they were in psilocybe?
No.
No.
It used to be, psilocybe used to have quite a number of species in it that did not turn blue. All of, as Luke said before, all of, I think, excuse me. One more time. Okay, I thought I had another one. Anyway, I think all of the Stakonica species used to be in psilocybe, and they are all non-bluing mushrooms. So psilocybe used to just be a more general sort of genus. It's more narrowed down now.
I noticed that the cap on this is inverted. Is that a particular trait that's I don't know, does it benefit by holding water in it, rain that might collect?
Oh, who knows? But that is a fairly consistent trait with this species. This species, the cap tends to flatten out pretty quickly, and sometimes it becomes concave. Yeah, so you don't find these with like bell-shaped or convex caps. Maybe very, very young, but the cap tends to flatten out pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And yeah, I mean, does it benefit the mushroom to be able to collect water? I don't know. Certainly there's a lot of Lactariae that you know form a concave cap, and it's apt to collect water. So maybe there's something to that.
Okay, we haven't seen this one.
No, these I
Hymenial.
found in, I don't know if Susan is here tonight, but one of these was from the Adirondacks and the other one was from Vermont last fall. And I'm pretty sure these are Stropharia Hornemanii. Yeah, I guess that's how you say it. And these are pretty dark. These are pretty dark. Look at the rhizomorphs on these, on the bases of the stalks. So this is another Stropharia species. It's not something I would eat. These grow on like near stumps and things. They're mostly a woodland species. I'm guessing. I mean, I don't find this down here. I think I may have seen this species once, like 30 years ago, down here in PA. And then there's another Stropharia, and I think I'm pretty sure this is the same species. This one was from Vermont. Same sort of habitat, mostly mixed hardwoods, some hemlocks thrown in. Look how pale these are. I think they're the same species. If you look on Champignon du Quebec for Stropharia hornemanii, you'll see brown ones and pale ones. So are there two different taxa here? I don't know. Not sure if anybody studied these. So, to the extent where they, have these been sequenced? I don't know. They're pretty cool looking mushrooms though. They're good sized mushrooms. They're easy to see.
The shaggy
Robust.
stipe.
Shiny stipe, a lot of shaggy stipe. Yeah, well, this one I had a hard time getting a picture. In fact, my friend who was with me at the time, he had a camera. He had a phone with a camera in it. And those cameras they put in the phones, I asked the guy at Target because I was buying a new phone. Not a really good phone. We don't even have cell phone service at my house, so I just get something to, like a Star Trek flip phone to keep in my car. But I asked him. I said, I've noticed that these phones have cameras in them that take these really good low light pictures, better than my standalone camera. And he told me it's because of the software that they put into the phones, that is specific to being in a phone, and they don't put that same software in a camera, standalone camera. So that picture was from my friend actually, but it was a low light photo, and it looks a little overexposed. So the camera in the phone is doing something to compensate for the lack of ambient light, and that's probably a little shinier looking than it was supposed to be. So I think I may have found Hyphaluma subviride, but on the other hand, I thought it was Fasciculare until Django Grootmeyers says he thinks it's subviride, growing on hardwood.
And small.
So they're small too, yeah. But I find Fasciculare is small also. But these were really small. These were really small. Yeah, you can see there how small they are. It looks like the caps most of them are about an inch wide. The one to the lower right, maybe a little bigger than an inch.
So we got two guys saying hardwood.
Yeah.
Django
So there's
and Garrett.
probably something to it. I don't know. When were these found? What was the time of the year? I forget.
October.
October. I find Fasciculare a lot of times earlier. So I don't know if that matters. But boy, these gills really were pretty bright green. So you can see
they look green, not green yellow.
Yeah, these are really green. But
Yeah.
but once again, a little subtle variation in color like that, does that mean it's a different species? Sometimes it might mean it, but I think just the presence of the green pigment, whether it's mixed in with yellow or not, that's enough to at least tell you, like, okay, I don't have Capnoides here or Ladaridium.
That's your mystery mushroom, and then Lauren sent me one more to look at.
I've got. There's one more you might want to show though. The Stropharia Rugosa Elongatum Pholiota.
That's what she
okay.
sent
So
me.
then there's this thing. Oh, okay. We'll look at hers then. So I don't know. This is probably Elongatum. Did I propose that?
Yeah.
There. Yeah. Oh, okay. But somebody overrode me. This is the one downside of Mushroom Observer having everybody be able to weigh in on what it is.
Jacob said Lacrimaria.
You know, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I didn't get spores from this. If it's Lacrimaria, you should be able to tell from the spores. They should be like big, thick, really dark spores under the scope. But I don't know. Did I get a micro on this? Was this one from New? Oh, this is okay. This was one from New Jersey. That's with Nina's scope. You know what? Those don't look like Lacrimaria spores to me. They look more like Hyphaluma spores.
What's Jacob know about the pine barrens, man?
Well, he's really good at these little things, though.
No, I
I'll
know
tell
he
you.
is.
Yeah, he's.
I know he is. I'm joking. I mean, I would never argue with
Yeah.
him.
I mean, every week I go on Mushroom Observer, and at least once a day every week I see some genus I never heard of, because Jacob found it, found one. So I think this is probably Hyphaluma Elongatum. That's my guess. So it's actually maybe not a mystery. This was from the Pine Barrens, I believe.
All right. And let me swing back around here.
Luke,
Yes.
Luke, I'd actually like to see Dave's Lutea as well, like so we can compare them.
Okay.
That'd be kind of neat because I've only ever found these ones.
Okay. It's a battle of the Luteas.
Look,
Yeah,
I
Marisol.
think it's going to be a tie because that's what you got here.
Go ahead,
can we
Sorry, go ahead.
think what will be the next thing for next week?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, let's pause this. Right. We'll pause this and then we'll look at this. Because we do only have 7 more minutes. And I know people have to go to bed. So I'm out of town next week. Marisol is taking care of business. Well, no, what do you guys want to look at? You could see what people are finding right now. Remember, find, you haven't done that in a few weeks. Or, I don't know, what do you want to do, Marisol?
We can do jelly fungi, any jelly, because there are so many things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
That'll be
jelly, sure. Might actually find some if there's supposed to be rain on Thursday.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think in southern PA and in New Jersey, you might have enough of a thaw.
Yeah,
to
it's
get some
rainy and warm.
jellies. Yeah,
Supposed to be up to,
before
like,
the next cold spell comes in on the
Yeah,
weekend.
okay. So we'll do jellies, any jelly.
Yeah.
Okay, jelly it is.
Okay, cool.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you. Okay, so this is Lawrence Stropharia forma lutea, or Raguso annulata forma lutea.
Looks like it to me.
There's a thick, super thick cogwheel.
Yeah, and you can see where these are young. That one you just showed was pretty, wasn't even expanded yet. And look, it's just completely yellow. The cap is completely yellow.
Luke, you called that a cogwheel?
That's the nickname they give these rings. I
Yeah,
guess
it
they're,
has like spokes.
yeah,
Right,
like gears.
Yeah,
Yeah, gears.
Cool.
Yeah, gears. Yeah.
thanks.
And when you actually see them on an expanded one, I don't think I've actually seen a good photograph tonight. Aren't they though, like double thick? Right? Like how do I say? It's like actually like 2 membranes pressed together.
Oh, I forget.
I think that's
forget
right.
Yeah, it might be.
Like one closer to the gills and then one closer to the stipe, kind of separating like that.
No, up and down. Like it's just like 2 membranes and kind of packed, like sandwiched together.
Yeah,
like
they're
this.
very close
Oh.
together on the
Yeah, very
stipe,
close.
but
I mean, like
you
a-
can peel them apart just about.
Yeah, like a millimeter
Oh,
thick
okay.
or something.
Got you.
Okay, so that was Lauren's version. Dave has. There we go.
Oh, hey, there it is, the double ring.
Double ring. Yep, that's the way good way
Yeah,
to say it.
there it is.
See that, Brandon?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so these are the same thing, the yellow wine cap.
Yellow from the get-go. Look at that button in the lower middle. They're all yellow. They're all completely yellow. Even the
And that-
stalks are kind of yellow.
And that's the differentiator between the normal rugoannulosa or whatever it's called.
Yeah, Rugoso annulata. Yeah.
Rugoso annulata. Yep.
Yeah, that is, and Igor explained before what the F means, and I still am not sure what the difference between F and VAR is. There might, I don't know. But you can see these are really yellow. And these wood chips, this mulch, this is the same area where those Agrossae putamminum were found. They were growing in the same, maybe 8 square yards of ornamental garden.
And see that? See the cogs in there?
Yeah.
Dave, I had the same exact experience with the lutea I found next to the Agrossae.
Oh, okay. I wonder what kind of Agrossae they were. Yeah, this picture was taken through my binocular scope. And I don't get good spore pictures through this scope. Or if I take maybe 30 pictures, I might get 1 or 2. It's my better scope, but it's binocular. So if I point my camera through one eyepiece, it's just not, I'm not going to usually get good resolution. Oh, that's where they were.
Okay. So if anybody wants to know where to find these, now you know.
Now you know. Yeah. Well, actually, though, they put new kind of wood chips here a couple of years ago, and I haven't found any of those since. There's a big one. Yeah. See the penny there?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's a big one.
So they get the same size as the red ones that I
Yes, they're
normally
big.
find
They're-
around
they're-
here.
They're big. Yep. They're
There's your-
big,
there's-
robust mushrooms.
There's your
Yeah.
Agrossae, right?
I think that's an Agrossae. Yeah. Seeing the cracked cap.
Is that
That's probably an Agrossae. Yeah.
is that praecox that cracks like that?
Praecox, well, a lot of the Agrossaes do.
Oh, okay.
But Praecox is the one that usually is, you'll see that as a distinguishing trait. Excuse me. But I think most of the, well, the bigger Agrossaes have caps that crack. There's one with the intact veil.
Yeah. All right. Nice pictures.
Thanks.
All right. Well, there we are. So thank you everyone for sharing. That was a really good, I felt like that was a really good exploration to Strophariaceae. I certainly learned a lot and have a better understanding of what we're talking about when we say that name. So everyone heard, I think, next week, jelly fungi, same time, same place with Marisol.
Yeah. There are puffballs and there are crossed fungi and there are the regular jellies, the ear, the 3 ear, blah, 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 blah. In different genus.
Yeah, what jellies occur in different forms. Some are just masses of jelly. Some form like these consistently shaped fruit bodies. So it's pretty general sort of category.
Some are like a film on the wood, very thin. Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So
Thanks.
so if it's squishy and jiggly, we can include it, right?
Yeah, even the calostomas, the puffballs.
All right.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay,
All right,
cool.
cool. Well, thank you, everyone. Everyone have a great night, and I'll see you all in 2 weeks.
Have a good trip.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
All right. Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Good night.
Next week.
Good night, everyone.
Everyone.
Night.